Ambassador Kethvaran stood before the emergency assembly of the Galactic Confederation, her bioluminescent patches pulsing with urgent warning frequencies. Around her, representatives from 237 star systems waited in tense silence, their various forms of attention focused on the veteran diplomat who had witnessed more galactic conflicts than any other living being. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying through neural translators to every consciousness present, "I stand before you today to issue a warning that may save countless civilizations from annihilation." The holographic display behind her activated, showing the serene blue-green world of Earth, rotating peacefully in space. This is the homeworld of the species known as Homo sapiens. To most of you, they appear to be a relatively young, peaceful species. Their diplomatic corps is polite, their trade agreements are fair, and their cultural exchanges have enriched galactic civilization. Ambassador Kethvaran's patches shifted to deep crimson, the universal warning coloration of her species. Do not be deceived by their apparent tranquility. I have spent 50 standard years studying human psychology, and I tell you now, there exists within every human a psychological state that transforms them from rational beings into living weapons of mass destruction. Delegate Morthex of the Crystal Consortium raised a prismatic appendage. "Ambassador, surely you exaggerate. Humans are physically inferior to most galactic species. Their technology, while adequate, is hardly." "Physical superiority becomes irrelevant," Kethvaran interrupted, "when a species stops caring about its own survival." The display changed, showing archived footage from human history. Battle scenes that had been carefully documented by early observation missions filled the chamber. Humans call it going Berserk, named after ancient warriors who would enter combat trances. But this phenomenon extends far beyond their primitive warfare. When humans perceive a threat to something they value, their families, their principles, their species, they undergo a psychological transformation that our xenopsychologists have termed total commitment syndrome. The footage showed human soldiers continuing to fight with multiple wounds that should have been fatal, civilians attacking military vehicles with improvised weapons, and scenes of humans accomplishing physically impossible feats through sheer determination. In this state, Kethvaran continued, humans become incapable of surrender, negotiation, or rational self-preservation. They will sacrifice everything: their lives, their worlds, their entire civilization, rather than compromise on what they perceive as non-negotiable principles. Delegate Zix Thara, of the Ethereal Collective, spoke through harmonic resonance, but surely their own government could control such behavior? "No," Kethvaran replied with absolute certainty. "Because when humans go berserk, it becomes contagious. The psychological state spreads through their entire species like a quantum virus. I have witnessed this firsthand." The display changed to show more recent footage, the siege of Kepler 452b, where human colonists had held off a draconian invasion force, 10 times their size, for 3 standard years. The Draconian Empire attempted to claim this human colony world through standard conquest protocols. They demonstrated superior firepower, offered generous surrender terms, and when refused, began systematic bombardment of civilian targets. The assembled delegates watched in stunned silence as the footage showed humans improvising weapons from mining equipment, children as young as 12 operating anti-aircraft guns, and elderly civilians conducting suicide attacks against draconian ground forces. The humans had no chance of military victory, Kethvaran explained. Their defeat was mathematically certain. Yet they continued fighting for 3 years, adapting their tactics, weaponizing their own infrastructure, and inflicting casualties on the draconian forces that defied all strategic projections. "What was the outcome?" asked Delegate Threx Val of the Warrior Caste Confederation. "The Draconians retreated," Kethvaran replied quietly. A galactic superpower, with technology centuries ahead of human capabilities, retreated from a single colony world because the humans simply would not stop fighting. The chamber erupted in shocked harmonics, clicking mandibles, and biomechanical whirring as delegates processed this information. But the most terrifying aspect, Kethvaran continued, was what happened after the draconian withdrawal. Word of the siege spread throughout human space. Every human world began preparing for war. Not just military preparation, total societal preparation. They started converting their entire civilization into a war machine. The display showed human worlds, civilian factories retooling to produce weapons, children being trained in combat techniques, peaceful research stations developing new military technologies. The humans had entered collective berserker state. They were preparing to fight the entire draconian empire, despite being outnumbered by factors of millions to one. Their own government couldn't stop them. Their military commanders couldn't control them. When I interviewed human leaders, they simply said they touched our people. Now they have to face all of us. Ambassador Kethvaran turned to face the assembly directly. The Draconian Empire issued a formal apology and paid reparations to avoid a war they knew they could win militarily, but would lose psychologically. Because you cannot defeat an enemy that views death as preferable to surrender. Ambassador called Delegate Velteron of the Ancient Ones. What are you recommending? Never threaten humanity's non-negotiables, Kethvaran replied solemnly. Never attack human civilians. Never attempt to enslave them or destroy what they consider sacred. Because once humans go berserk, they stop being individuals and become a collective force of nature. She manipulated the display one final time, showing psychological analysis charts. In their berserker state, humans have demonstrated the ability to ignore pain, function with fatal injuries, and maintain combat effectiveness long past the point where other species would have collapsed. They become, quite literally, unstoppable through conventional means. And if someone has already triggered this response, asked Delegate Morthex nervously. Ambassador Kethvaran's bioluminescent patches dim to the colors of morning. Then I suggest immediate surrender and complete capitulation to whatever terms the humans demand. Because the alternative is facing 8 billion beings who have psychologically accepted that they may have to die to protect what they love and who consider that a perfectly acceptable trade. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the assembly. I have seen species with technology that could reshape reality, beings that called themselves gods, civilizations that had conquered entire galactic clusters. None of them could stop a human population that had gone berserk. As the emergency assembly adjourned, new protocols were immediately drafted for all future interactions with humanity. The central principle was simple: avoid triggering the berserker response at all costs. Because some species, when pushed to their limits, simply broke. Humans, when pushed to their limits, became unbreakable. And that, as Ambassador Kethvaran had learned, was far more dangerous.